Hi, welcome back to Chronically Authentic, the podcast where we talk to you about stuff. So while I was mid hangry session pre-recording this, I was like, I don't even know what the fuck to talk about. I'm too hungry to even think. And Matt was like, yo, calm down.
Literally, I was like, are you having a hangry moment? Yes.
Yes, I am. So, Matt was like, why don't you tell your story about how we ended up right here, right now, talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to start. Like, where do we start this? I like legitimately, I never really know how to talk about my stuff.
Mm-hmm. I would say start with where you were and what happened to get you where you are now. All of the things that happened along the way, good and bad.
Well, I feel like there was this like domino of things that happened so quick. Um, if you don't know, my past, like my job, what I used to do before I did all of the many things I do now, wasn't expecting me to not be able to like tell the story.
Is it too hard?
It is. And it's really because like I very much still struggle with the loss of my career and like that. I mean, I don't really, in my mind, I don't think of it as a grieving process or that I have grief over it, but I definitely have feelings
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Oh, yeah.
I used to be a hairstylist, but more than that, I used to be an educator. And I love to teach. I love to share. First and foremost, I love to learn. I love learning new stuff. And I love to share that knowledge because it's just, apparently I'm really good at speaking. um, but yeah, I used to teach cosmetology, and that was like my greatest thing. Like, of all of the things I did with my career, yeah, I did a lot of good hair. Yeah, I had a lot of great opportunities in the business, but nothing was like teaching.
Mm-hmm.
It really, truly was the most fulfilling thing I've ever done because I met so many amazing people that had huge visions and huge goals for their life. And, I'll always remember this. One of my favorite lessons, because I would teach intro, which are people who they're basically like toddlers in the hair industry. They don't even know how to walk yet. They don't know what a comb is or how to even hold it properly because, yes, there is a right and a wrong way to hold a comb.
Oh, I'm aware now.
And so, anyway, it was just a really fulfilling time in my life. And I used to teach for Aveda, and the campus that I taught at went through some growing pains, and they brought
Mm-hmm.
in new leadership who just ran that place down,
Mm-hmm.
as far as like the staff goes. And I ended up leaving my job as an educator because it had just got so bad I actually couldn't even do my job. um yeah, so I went back behind the chair, and that was what, 2019. it
Yeah,
was
that
it
was
was
it.
Halloween, October 31st. I went and got a new job at a salon.
Mm-hmm.
And around this time, I also started getting really sick. And when I say started getting really sick, that's because the years leading up to this specific year, I was already sick, but I was still functioning. I could still manage to get up, pull my shit together, and get to work on time, do my job for 12, 13, 14, 15 hours, and then go home, binge eat, do some drugs, pass out, wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and do it all again the next day. Um, like takes my breath away thinking about how much time I lived at my job and spent zero time taking care of myself, both physically and mentally.
When we first got together, you were working 12, 13-hour shifts.
Yeah. It was insane. And it's not like I'm sitting at a desk. I mean, it's your brain's constantly in motion, talking. I mean, and my students always used to joke that like my classroom was my stage because I would have to come in and perform all day long. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but learning about hair sounds really fun and exciting. Like girls go to hair school because they think we're going to sit around and
Braid
braid
each
each
other's
other's
hair.
hair and put on our makeup all day. No, it's fucking science. It's chemistry and it's geometry. And there's lines and angles and big, fat, long words that have, chemical makeup behind them. And you're just like, whoa, I was not expecting this. And hair color isn't just as simple as like putting a tube in a bowl and some liquidy shit and giving it a mix and slapping it on hair. No, there's protocol and there's ways and there's formulations and it is a lot. And then you have people who don't know any of it. And you're having to basically speak Mandarin to people who don't even know English.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, mentally it was a lot. Anyway, so I end up back in a salon and like there's just so much stuff that happened in such a short amount of time that it's like I feel like I'm running a marathon trying to like pinpoint these things in my brain to like say it.
Yeah, the chronological order of things because so much happened in like a 3 or 4 month span.
Yeah, like and it happened quick. Um let's jump back even further than that. So that would be what we're almost on 4 years since that happened. February of 24 will be 4 years. Wow. So 14 years ago, almost 15 years ago, I got breast implants. Did you know that?
I knew that.
I got breast implants. And about 6 weeks after I got my breast implants, I started feeling body aches, a lot of body like pain, joint pain, back pain specifically. I remember I was living in Chicago at the time. And I remember constantly complaining about my back hurting all the time. I was going to chiropractors. I was going to the doctor constantly because I was just having all these like rando health problems. Never once batted an eyelash that it had anything to do with these like big giant water balloons that I had just shoved into my body.
Why would it be that?
It wasn't. I did my research and the internet said that they were safe. So I believed it. Anyway, so for years I was dealing with these issues, lots of different things. Anyway, 2019, November. It was November 2019. What did it start with a stomach pain?
Yeah, you had that like we thought it was appendicitis.
Yeah. It started with the stomach pain in 2019 and I went to the doctor and the doctor was like, I don't know, it's probably your appendix, so go to the ER. And so that I go to the ER and they're like, we don't know. And the only way to know is to open you up, but according to the Surgeon General, this is the surgeon in the ER telling me this, by the way, if I go in there to look, I have to come out with your appendix. Like your appendix is coming out regardless of if it's good or bad.
I forgot about that.
But he was being so mean and he was yelling at me and I was in pain and I started crying and I'm looking at him and I'm like, this little short guy's yelling at me. Yeah, it was not good. So anyway, like I go to the hospital. They're basically like, we're going to need to cut out your appendix. And I'm like, no, you're not taking any organs unless you have definitive proof that it needs to come out. We're not going in, playing Where's Waldo. So they just loaded me up on pain medicine. I think I stayed the night, didn't I?
Yeah.
They loaded me up on pain meds, put me in a room for the night, and let me just sit there hopped up on all the pain meds.
And I slept in that little chair next to the bed, looking at you with all the tubes hooked up to you and stuff.
Yeah, it was scary.
Yeah, it really was.
And So I ended up getting discharged to go home, still having pain, didn't get an answer. They did some imaging. It was not my appendix. Um, and so life went on. I tried to just suck it up and go stand on my feet for 12, 13 hours a day, doing people's hair, being a therapist, doing it with a smile, being super happy. Because if you're a Veda, you know, like they're all about the power of touch and not transferring your own, check your shit at the door basically, and, you know, be professional. How do you be professional when your insides are rotting?
Mm-hmm.
um, it was really hard. Well, and I got sick again. Like it was getting to the point where it was so bad. Like I was waking up, like I wasn't sleeping. And when I would wake up in the morning to go to work, and I would just be in the shower getting ready, and like just not well, very ill.
We tell this story all the time about going for a walk and you not being able to make it to the end of the street. This was around that time when you were really sick and just your body was fighting against you.
We live 6 houses down from a stop sign. I couldn't even make it halfway to the stop sign. And 4 houses down, there's an old couple, and we were I was in so much pain. Like I was literally like hunched over, waddling like an 80-year-old person with a walker. And the old couple, who's probably in their late 70s, was driving by. And the old man stopped and rolled his window down and said, the old man was like, "Are you all right? Like, do you need me to give you a ride home?" I almost said yes, because I honestly, in my mind, didn't think I was going to be able to make it um, the next couple houses to get back to our house so I could just crawl back into bed. I think we ended up going to the ER again.
Mm-hmm.
I got admitted into the hospital again. They couldn't tell me anything. They couldn't tell me anything that was going on. Nobody could. Nobody could tell me anything, and I was just actively dying. Like, do you remember how weird my skin looked?
You were turning like yellow.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was such a weird time to like not know what was going on, but to know that you're really sick and not getting any answers. And at the time, that was new to me and probably new to you as well, even though you had been feeling really rough for years.
I was still, like I said, like I was feeling sick all of those years, but every year it got worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think, and this is so, knowing what I know now, it's so fascinating to like look back and be like, wow, that literally explains everything.
It almost makes me feel bad for people who are still living that way. And like, there's probably millions of people out there that just are sick with no answers. And like I said, I had never experienced that in my life. And it really made me sympathetic to that and like really made me feel for people out there who just aren't getting the medical help that they need.
What's even crazier was one of the things that I had a really hard time with was because I have a history of mental health on my medical records as far as depression, anxiety go. Anytime I would go to get help,
Oh, yeah.
I would just be told that I'm having anxiety, or I need to be put on birth control,
Or they thought you were trying to get pills.
or they thought I was a drug seeker trying to get medication. When every time, mind you, I would go in and insist I don't want to be on any form of pain medicine because I know firsthand the addictions that come from prescription pain medicines.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so I was just like completely flabbergasted and offended and felt like a victim because I couldn't even get help from a doctor.
That is the part that really upset me
Is that,
being.
is that making you boil a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit?
because as the husband, being in the room with you, watching how you got treated by those doctors back then, I'm reliving that now. And they would like almost talk down to you in a way or not believe what you were saying. And when the pill thing came up, and a lot of people were like, oh, well, we're not going to give you a prescription medicine for pain relief. And you're like, I didn't ask for that. And I'm sitting there like, are you not listening to her, dude?
No, they weren't
And
actually.
we even had a male doctor when you went in for your problems. He was talking to me like I was supposed to be your spokesperson there. And that really upset us at the time. And
That was the first time I actually met my primary care doctor when I
mm-hmm,
was having that pseudo appendicitis.
mm-hmm,
Um, he was yelling at me in the room with Matt, and I was in such a fragile state at that point. I mean, it's kind of mean to like talk this way on my past, but like I was such a weak person. Like I could not control my emotions whatsoever. I was
mm-hmm.
sobbing because this doctor, I'm already in pain. Let's just cover that basis. I'm already in excruciating pain. I can't even breathe. Every time I took a breath in, it was like I was being stabbed in the abdomen. And now I have this doctor who's supposed to be helping me yelling at me. And then completely refuses to even address me and starts only talking to Matt. And I'm looking at Matt like, fucking do something.
Yeah. So I think I even said, I was like, I'm not here to be seen. You need to talk to her.
Actually, what you said was, I think we need to restart
Yes.
and like
Yes.
we need to redo this encounter
Yeah.
and you need to talk to her.
You need to slow your roll, Doctor Sir.
Yeah. Well, anyway, after I think like 3 hospital stays with no answers as to what was going on. My levels weren't normal, but they weren't so abnormal that they would definitively give me an answer to autoimmune disease, lupus, EDS, anything like that. It was always very borderline for those things, even though, like, let's sidebar this for a second. In medicine, there is a scale. Anything outside of that window is either above or below normal, abnormal, acceptable, unacceptable results. So when my levels would always come in 1 or 2 hair points above or below what would be considered normal, it was never alarming to the doctors. And my question, I'm a why person, would always be like, well, why do we have this range if when someone is out of it in high or low, you write it off as not important.
Huh.
And then I would be a problem because I was questioning their medicine.
This is the time when you started looking into your own health too and looking up what these things were.
Fuck yeah.
This is how you started to discover what it was because you were doing your own research.
This is how I started inserting myself into the conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
I really started having to be my own advocate because the person who was my doctor was not capable of advocating for their patient to get me answers. They only wanted to put band aids on gunshot wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really started reading everything that I could get my eyes on, literally everything. I already have a thing about reading medical studies. So when I really started getting sick and was not getting answers, I became a little obsessive, but in the best way,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe, I know you agree with this, it saved my life.
1,000%. Yes.
Yeah, it did. I don't know why. I had an idea. I was still smoking at the time. I was sitting in the garage, probably on my like 45th cigarette, which also had nothing to do with what was going on with me, I might add.
No.
Not related. I was probably on like cigarette number 30 of the day. And I don't know, like, I genuinely don't know what caused me to look up studies on breast implants. And I kid you not, it was like lightning. Everything fucking clicked.
Mm-hmm.
I you ever see those like you ever see those TV shows where the crazy person is trying to like tell you the whole conspiracy and they got the wall and they've got pins and red lines everywhere?
Yeah, the Charlie meme.
That was fucking me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me because suddenly the last almost because it was almost 11 years, made sense of why 5 to 6 weeks after I got my implants in, I started feeling off with my bones and my muscles. I wasn't active athletically, but I was an athletic person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I always have had that build, just and yeah, I became a rodent. I didn't move. Like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like a semi truck just came by and was like, whoa, and just literally everything about the last almost 11 years made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just, like when you're trying to plug something into an outlet and you're like wiggling around, it won't go in. And then finally it gets into the outlet plug and you're like, finally, that was me with all of it. And then I started like reading everything that I could find about breast implant studies. And did you know back in the 90s, I think it was 1991, Dow Corning was forced to put a halt on implanting women with their implants by the FDA because women were coming out talking about how they were having all of these like multi-systemic chronic health problems after getting breast implants.
I'm shocked that putting plastic bags full of saline water inside of your body can
But
hurt
that's
you.
just what's really funny. It's not saline water. Like that's the misinformation right there. Because I actually did my research ever since I was about 11 years old. I wanted breast implants. And I read up. I'm a reader. I like to know
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I read reviews of other women who had gone and got their surgery, and it was like 4 or 5, 6 days post-op. They all looked great. Their boobs looked great. They felt great. They felt more confident. And that was all, that was the only shit you could find on the internet at the time, because I wasn't looking for people who were having adverse problems. I was only looking at before and after of
Mm-hmm.
small breasted women getting a specific cup size that I wanted so that I could get a mental picture of what I was going to look like when I got my breast
I
implants.
have a feeling that's the majority of cases that women are looking at.
It is.
Yeah.
Because if you go to YouTube now, today, and you type in breast implant, the first thing that's going to pop up after you type implant, you probably won't even get past the P of implant before illness pops up behind it.
So you're really sick and you're starting to do this research. I would come home from work at night and she would be like,
I have a presentation prepared.
yeah, she's like, I got some information I need to tell you. And I'm like, okay, let me look into this. And she starts telling me these things. And even my mind is blown because I'm like, yeah, you went through that. You went through that. All of the things that you were describing was literally the things that you had gone to the hospital for, that you had complained about in the past. And even my mind started to be like, I was like, you found your answer. Now what the fuck do you do with that information?
I researched some more because I had at that up until that point, I had lived with breast implants for almost 11 years. They were my personality, they were
Mm-hmm.
my sexuality, they were what made me feel feminine, and I wrapped all of who I was as a person around the size of my boobs. I was treated differently by both men and women.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like I was given opportunities that I shouldn't have had because I was not qualified for, but I qualified because my chest was just the right size. And the thought of taking out my breast implants,
Not an option.
no, absolutely not. And in fact, at that point in time, I had already had 4 other surgeries regarding my breast implants because I always had an issue with them. I had a rupture a year and a half in, and I had to get both of them replaced, and I did go bigger. A couple years after that, I had to have another surgery because I started developing a semi rare complication with my connective tissue, which I learned later was part of a connective tissue disorder. completely brought about by breast implants and the way that they override your immune system. Um, I also had to go into another surgery to get my breasts lifted internally because my muscle, because they were under the muscle, was
Mhm.
so dead that it was my body wanted these fuckers out.
They were trying to
They were
tell you
trying
that.
so hard to get rid. They were literally, my muscles was pushing the implant down to like come out my rib cage. Yeah. So what did I do? I didn't listen to that. I'm a stupid 20 something who's like getting her way with everything. She's got big ass titties.
Sew these things back in
You
place.
damn right. I did. I went to a surgeon. I was like, you need to make this look better.
Yeah.
And you know what he did? He fucking cut my most important muscle in my chest to create a pocket, a bigger pocket, a wall, if you will, to hold my implant to stop it from coming over and to stop it from bottoming out. So he completely mutilated my pectoralis major muscle in my chest, which is literally the biggest muscle across the front of your chest, to Frankenstein a way to make my boobs look good externally. He butchered them internally.
That shouldn't be legal to go in and like permanently alter people's muscles for aesthetic purposes, I feel like.
Knowing what I know now, I don't care how insecure you are about your body. You should not be allowed to change it. In fact, you should just go to therapy and learn to love the things about yourself that, for whatever reason, someone said or did something that made you feel not good enough. You should work on that part of yourself. And if you still feel like you need to physically alter yourself to feel good, fine. But heal your mental health first.
It shouldn't be, but that is probably a wildly controversial statement.
So yeah, anyway, I start making all of these connections with my health, and I, up until this point, I had been going to my primary doctor with all of these things and all of these different problems and taking medications, not getting results, having worse things happen, having things affecting my kidneys and all of these things. At this point I was unable to work because I couldn't even fucking see straight to even begin to do somebody's hair. Um I go into my doctor one day after really doing the research, and I found a couple of surgeons who had done studies and put
Mhm.
information out there, and I printed all of this out. I brought it all with me to my primary care, prepared to make the argument of my fucking life because, like I said, he and I did not get along. We were bumping heads constantly. And I walked in there and I said, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I need you to hear me out. I think the problem that is causing everything is my breast implants. And he leaned forward and he looked at me and said, I think I could understand that. Can you tell me more? And I said, you bet your ass I can. And I schooled my doctor that day in the office. I was the longest I'd ever sat in a room with him. It never lasted more, this is going to sound dirty. Being in a room with my doctor at the time never lasted more than 90 seconds. I was in the room with him for 12 minutes.
Wow, that's an impressive come up.
Yeah. Yeah. Less than 90 seconds he would spend in a room with me every time I went in to see him any other time. But I finally said something that made him go, huh,
Hmm.
okay. And you know what he did? He referred me out to plastics. He sent me to a plastic surgeon, which did nothing for me because the plastic surgeon wasn't going, what could they do? They weren't going to be able to diagnose anything. And really, what it came down to was everything that I had researched and looked up said that women got better when they explanted
Mhm.
or removed their breast implants by taking out not only the implant, but the capsule that your body forms around the implant to protect itself from a foreign object. And that happens with any object that you implant into the body. Your body does that to protect itself from a foreign object. Your body doesn't want stuff in there that doesn't belong there. It doesn't matter if it's a life-saving thing. it don't belong.
Yeah, whether it's
It doesn't
metal or
matter.
plastic, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. If it isn't an organic compound that your body created, it doesn't want it in there.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, to remove that capsule containing the implant as a whole and to remove every little bit of tissue with it. The reason for that is because implants shed silicone. They shed particles throughout your entire body. And that's terrifying to hear. If you are listening to this and you have breast implants, don't freak out. Breast implant illness does not affect all people the same. However, no breast implant is safe.
Well put.
Yeah. So I had to make the really hard decision. I didn't know if taking them out was going to fix anything. There were no guarantees.
That was a huge leap of faith that was not taken lightly at the time.
No, I was fucking terrified.
Mm-hmm.
And I had so many emotional like I feel it happening now just thinking about like how hard that was of a decision to make. One of the biggest things when I started learning that breast implants even did this to people, I found a Facebook group. At the time I found the Facebook group, it had over 50,000 women in it. And I would stay up because my insomnia was like insane. I would stay up all hours of the night reading story after story after story after story from thousands upon thousands of women who all were having the exact same experience that I was. Mm-hmm. And that was how I knew. That's how I knew I was making the right decision and that I was on the right track, was that if it was just me or maybe 2 or 3 other people, okay, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of other people literally living the exact same nightmare that I had spent the last 11 years trying to figure out what the fuck is wrong with me.
That ain't no coincidence.
I don't believe in coincidences, not in that way. And I remember going into my surgeon's office and him telling me a story about another patient who had a similar thing and she took them out and she felt better, but she really wanted her implants back in, so he put them back in. And I was like, I'm glad that was her, but I just want to feel better. Mm-hmm. I was so scared to make that call. I remember one night talking to you about it and us going back and forth and thinking like, how are we going to pay for this? Like, it's going to be expensive because insurance isn't going to cover it. And like all of these things. And he was just like, that shouldn't even be a concern for you at this time. Like, we will figure it out. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. But then I started dealing with like the guilt of I did this to myself, and that realization that I was so obsessed with how I looked, or in fact, better yet, how I didn't look. And I was so insecure in myself that I was terrified of what my boobs were going to look like after I removed them. And I remember the surgery I had had right after Matt and I had met, like a few months after Matt. We met in May, mm-hmm. and I had surgery in July to have a correction done, one of those correction surgeries that I had had. And I remember in that consultation for that appointment, which would have been April, which was right before I met you, that was 2017. I remember asking my surgeon at that consultation, talk to me about just taking them out. And I started dealing with a lot of guilt at the beginning of 2020 because I kept thinking about that conversation that I had had 3 years before, because I had had so many problems with my breast implants that at that point, every couple of years, I was undergoing another surgery to correct a new issue. And I was really hit hard with, I should have taken them out then. I shouldn't have had that surgery. I should have just not been a coward and done this then. I didn't know in 2017 what I knew at the beginning of 2020. And January of 2020, I made the decision to remove my breast implants. And then the pandemic happened. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it. And we'll pick this back up next week. Because if you think that was a lot, that's not even the half of it. So come back next week and
Cliffhanger.
yeah.
Jeez.
When I tell you that I have come back from nothing, you don't know what you don't know yet. Next week, I'm going to fill you in on some more of that. So make sure you follow, like, subscribe. Come join the conversation on YouTube. Come hang out with me over on TikTok or Instagram. Anywhere you want to connect, you can. I just love that you guys are all here. And bring some popcorn next week because this shit's going to get dramatic. It's hard to talk about that. And as I say this, if you're watching the video of this, you see me looking at something directly in front of me, and it's a Post-it from a therapy session I had with my therapist where she told me it's not powerlessness, it's openness. And I think that there's a reason that Post-it hangs right there on my board years later.